For centuries, the stake stood as a grim symbol of justice, or perhaps more accurately, of vengeance. This ancient form of execution, a punishment marked by its brutal and horrific nature, was once feared across Europe and beyond. The very thought of being bound to a wooden post, set alight, and burned alive sent chills down the spine of even the most hardened criminals. Yet, despite its undeniable cruelty, the punishment of burning at the stake refused to fade into history. It persisted far longer than most forms of execution, surviving through centuries of changing laws, evolving societies, and the constant search for more humane ways of dealing with criminals. The history of burning at the stake begins in the murky shadows of medieval Europe, where religious zeal and political power often intertwined to decide who lived and who perished. In the early days, the stake was a public spectacle. It was designed to instill terror, to serve as both retribution for the condemned and as a warning to the rest of the populace. It wasn't just criminals who found themselves tied to the post, it was also those who were seen as a threat to the established order, particularly heretics, witches, and political dissidents. The Catholic Church played a central role in the propagation of the stake, using it as a method of punishment for anyone who dared to challenge its teachings or authority. Heresy was a crime punishable by death, and the Church, in its quest for absolute power, was quick to use the stake as a tool of intimidation. Some of the most infamous executions occurred during the medieval Inquisition, a time when accusations of heresy or witchcraft could turn anyone into a target. The condemned, often women accused of witchcraft, would be burned alive in public squares, their screams filling the air as the flames consumed them. This horrific spectacle became a way for the Church to demonstrate its power and authority over both the soul and the body. However, it wasn't just religious figures who used the stake as a means of punishment. Monarchs and rulers across Europe, from England to France, saw it as an effective means of eliminating political rivals or anyone who posed a threat to their rule. The most infamous of these trials occurred during the English and French witch hunts, which spanned from the 15th to the 18th centuries. Thousands of women were condemned to burn for alleged witchcraft, their fates sealed by public hysteria and fear. The flames, however, were not always seen as a mark of divine justice. Many condemned were innocent, their only crime being the possession of knowledge or simply being born in a time and place where superstition reigned. Even as the centuries passed and more modern forms of execution, such as the guillotine or hanging, became more widely used, the stake refused to die. It lingered in the shadows, a method of punishment that, despite its gruesome reputation, was still used in certain corners of the world. In fact, burning at the stake continued to be used as a form of execution well into the 19th century, far later than most people realize. One of the last known instances of burning at the stake occurred in the early 19th century in Europe, where a woman in France was publicly executed for allegedly poisoning her husband. Her trial and subsequent execution sparked outrage, not just for the brutal nature of the punishment, but for the fact that such an ancient, barbaric method of execution was still being used. As Europe entered into the modern age, the practice of burning at the stake began to be phased out, replaced by more humane methods of execution, like hanging or beheading. But despite its eventual decline, the stake's legacy lives on. The burning of heretics, witches, and political enemies has left a dark scar on history. It serves as a reminder of the horrors that societies have inflicted in the name of justice, and it raises unsettling questions about the true nature of punishment. Was the stake truly a means of delivering justice, or was it simply an expression of power and control over the powerless? Was it a necessary evil in a world that demanded conformity, or was it the manifestation of fear and ignorance at its worst? The memory of these brutal executions is not just a matter of historical interest. It's a warning. The ways in which people have been punished throughout history are often a reflection of society's values and fears. The stake was a manifestation of the belief that certain crimes were so heinous that they demanded not just death, but a death that would be witnessed by all, a death that would leave no room for dignity, a death that would burn away the soul. In the next part of this series, we will explore some of the most infamous executions at the stake, and we will examine the lasting impact they had on society. We will uncover the stories of those who were burned alive, from heretics to political prisoners, and we will see how the legacy of these executions continues to influence modern concepts of justice and punishment. As we continue our journey into the dark history of burning at the stake, it becomes clear that the punishment, though officially abandoned in most parts of the world, left behind scars that remain deeply embedded in the collective consciousness. From religious persecution to political suppression, the stake was not just an execution tool, it was a symbol of power, fear, and control, used by the ruling elite to maintain order by instilling terror into the hearts of the people. Though it may have faded from the pages of legal systems, its legacy continues to shape how we view justice, punishment, and the intersection of power and vulnerability. One of the most tragic aspects of the stake as a form of execution is the sheer number of innocent lives lost to it. Thousands of individuals, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft during the height of the European witch hunts, many of whom were burnt alive at the stake. These women were often targeted due to superstitions, prejudice, or their marginalization within society. In many cases, the so-called witches were simply healers, midwives, or women with knowledge of herbs and remedies that the community did not understand. Their knowledge, once revered, was suddenly branded as dangerous, their very existence a threat to the religious and societal structures of the time. One such tragic case is that of Joan of Arc, the French peasant girl who led the French army to victory during the 100 Years' War. Accused of witchcraft and heresy for her visions and belief in divine guidance, Joan was tried by an ecclesiastical court which was under the influence of the English forces. The trial was a sham, designed to justify her execution, and after a humiliating and biased trial, she was burned at the stake in 1431. Her execution was not only a political maneuver to remove a powerful symbol of resistance, but also an act meant to destroy her spiritual authority. Despite the brutality of her death, Joan's legacy lived on, and she was later canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. But Joan's execution was not an isolated case. The witch hunts that spanned centuries in Europe resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands, many of whom were burned alive at the stake. The belief in witches and the power of the devil fueled these violent persecutions. The religious leaders who condemned these people saw their executions as a way to purify society, eradicating what they perceived to be evil. In this context, the stake became a religious tool, an instrument of divine justice, even though it was rooted in fear and ignorance. While the majority of those burned at the stake were women, the punishment was also meted out to political dissenters and heretics, those who threatened the established order or rejected the teachings of the Church. Throughout history, kings and rulers have used the stake as a tool to suppress opposition, to rid their kingdoms of those who posed a threat to their power. In some cases, individuals who challenged the religious orthodoxy or questioned the legitimacy of the ruling monarchy were burned alive, their bodies consumed by the flames as a public spectacle meant to remind the people of the consequences of defying authority. In 16th century England, the reign of Queen Mary I, known as Bloody Mary, saw hundreds of Protestants burned at the stake for heresy. These executions were part of her efforts to restore Catholicism in England after her father, Henry VIII, had broken away from the Catholic Church and established the Church of England. Under Mary's reign, burning at the stake was used as a political tool to eliminate those who resisted Catholic rule. The most famous of these martyrs was Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, a leader of the English Reformation. In 1556, Cranmer, who had initially recanted his Protestant beliefs under pressure, was burned alive at the stake for his unwavering faith. His death, along with that of other Protestant reformers, marked a dark chapter in English religious history, where the flames of the stake symbolized the power of the monarchy and the church to destroy dissent. The punishment of burning at the stake persisted into the 18th century in some parts of Europe, long after other forms of execution, such as hanging or guillotining, had become the norm. In some countries, it was seen as the ultimate punishment for those guilty of treason, blasphemy, or even the crime of being different. It wasn't until the 19th century that burning at the stake was officially outlawed in most European countries, replaced by more humane forms of execution. Yet, even as the practice was phased out, its legacy continued to haunt the social consciousness, shaping the ways in which societies view justice and punishment. The psychological legacy. Fear and control. Even as the stake faded from legal systems, its psychological impact lingered. For centuries, the very idea of burning alive was a tool used to manipulate the public. The fear of such a painful and ignominious death was used as a deterrent to keep people in line, to suppress rebellion, and to destroy any perceived threat to the existing power structures. The very image of a person burning alive in public, their body consumed by flames, was enough to strike terror into the hearts of the people, serving as a potent reminder of what awaited those who dared to challenge authority. The psychological imprint left by the stake can still be seen in the ways in which we view punishment today. While the methods of execution have evolved, the idea of using fear as a tool of control remains. Governments, institutions, and even societies continue to use punishment as a way to control behavior. And though the stake is no longer a tool of justice, the underlying principles of power, control, and fear continue to shape our legal systems. The enduring symbol of the stake, the history of the stake as a form of punishment, is one of terror, brutality, and social control. From the religious persecutions of the medieval period to the political executions of the Reformation, the stake was a tool used to maintain order by eliminating those deemed a threat to society. While it is no longer part of modern legal systems, the symbolic power of the stake endures, reminding us of the dangers of fear-driven justice and the dark legacy of history's most brutal punishments. As we reflect on the history of the stake, we are forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of justice, the abuse of power, and the lengths to which societies have gone to maintain control. The stake may no longer burn, but its legacy continues to fuel debates on how we punish those who defy authority and how far we are willing to go to ensure that order is maintained. A dark reminder: the punishment that refused to die is no longer a part of our world, but it remains a dark reminder of the extremes to which societies have gone in the name of justice. As we move forward, we must remember the lessons of the stake, for in understanding the cruelty of the past, we can begin to build a future where such horrors are never repeated.